Hello everyone, welcome to the Tim Booker channel. I wish you a pleasant time listening to books. Today, the book I'm about to talk to you about is Set Boundaries, Find Peace, by Nedra Glover Tawwab, an American psychologist. Its subtitle is A Guide to Reclaiming Yourself. When you hear this book title and subtitle, you might be a bit surprised. Doesn't boundaries imply limitations and restrictions? How can they lead to freedom again? Actually, here's the thing. In the preface, author Tawwab mentions that through years of clinical psychology counseling, she discovered that many patients' confusion and distress, though seemingly diverse and unique, feeling exhausted, losing oneself, resenting others for ingratitude, or wishing to escape their current lives, ultimately converged on one root cause, an inability to say no to others, leading to carrying excessive obligations and burdens. The depletion of time, energy, and resources far exceeds what they could handle. Tawwab points out that this inadvertent entrapment occurs because we fail to refuse others, neglecting to establish clear and reasonable psychological boundaries between ourselves and others. This lack of demarcation results in our mental and tangible well-being being akin to a city without protective walls or moats, open to anyone's entry, trampling, or pillaging. At this point, you might begin to grasp the significance of the book's title. By excessively considering others' feelings and needs, we expend significant time and resources, thereby restricting our own mental and physical freedom. Hence, Tawwab aims to remind us of the importance of maintaining self-boundaries. She provides a concise set of testing standards and action plans, aiding in assessing whether we possess healthy self-boundaries and how to establish and maintain them, ensuring our rights and freedoms while fostering positive and healthy relationships with others. At the book's onset, Tawwab candidly shares her own struggles with this issue. She admits to once unconditionally accepting others' requests and helping them, even at the expense of her own interests, driven by a reluctance to disappoint. However, Tawwab emphasizes that our capacity to assist others is limited, and we have no infinite obligation to anyone. Simultaneously, effective assistance to others relies on building a robust self. Each person must first practice self-care before anything else. Establishing clear and reasonable boundaries in interpersonal interactions is fundamental to self-care. Next, I'll break down the book into 3 parts to elucidate its contents for you. Firstly, we'll explore what self-boundaries are, how they form and evolve. We'll also examine the negative impacts on our lives if we fail to define a rational and clear self-boundary. In the second part, we'll follow Tawwab's guidance to learn how to construct healthy and clear boundaries between ourselves and others through 4 steps. Finally, we'll delve into Tawwab's insights on how boundaries should be delineated in the specific context of the family, uncovering the principles to follow in our interactions and engagements with others. Firstly, let's delve into what boundaries mean in psychology. Generally, boundaries refer to the boundaries of one's rights and freedoms, areas encompassed by one's own will. When others intrude without consent, it constitutes harm and offense. This concept is somewhat akin to what we commonly refer to as bottom lines, or the sense of propriety, in daily life. Setting boundaries between ourselves and others serves as self-protection when burdens become excessive. It's also a way to express reasonable expectations to others and a crucial element in experiencing safety and comfort in interpersonal relationships. Tawwab summarizes that as social creatures, humans possess 6 types of boundaries: physical, sexual, cognitive, emotional, property, and time. In essence, an individual with a healthy sense of boundaries fully respects others. They refrain from physical contact without voluntary consent, ridiculing or belittling others' viewpoints, prying into others' privacy, denying others' emotional experiences, and encroaching upon others' valuable time and possessions without permission. In the initial chapters, Tawwab recounts the story of a seeker, Erica. She is a single working mother with 2 daughters. Erica works as an accountant and often feels mentally and physically drained during busy seasons as she juggles her job and caring for her daughters. Consequently, exhausted Erica finds herself stuck in negative emotions, even contemplating abandoning her 2 daughters. Eventually, she seeks help from Tawwab. Tawwab explains that Erica's problem stems from her failure to set clear psychological boundaries between herself and others, leading to excessive fatigue. Firstly, in a bid to maintain a perfect mother image, Erica takes on everything, refusing to seek help, managing household chores, cooking, ferrying her children, and tutoring them, leaving her only a few hours for work after putting her children to bed, allowing her at most 5 to 6 hours of sleep. Secondly, Erica knowingly or unknowingly neglects her own physical and mental needs, hardly allocating time for relaxation or self-care in her packed schedule. Thirdly, Erica harbors a people-pleasing personality, prioritizing others' satisfaction at the expense of herself. Thus, if we continually notice feelings of self-neglect, overwhelming burdens, resentment, or avoidance in our interpersonal interactions, it's likely that our psychological boundary setting has encountered issues. Tawwab explains that, akin to many psychological issues, some individuals struggle to establish correct self-boundaries, often rooted in their upbringing and family dynamics. Since humans naturally possess desires to meet their own needs, from infancy, we learn various ways to express these needs, starting from basic actions like smiling or crying. From infancy, humans observe and learn through caregivers' responses whether their needs will be met, inadvertently shaping healthy or unhealthy boundary-setting tendencies. Author Tawwab states that the family serves as the first school in everyone's life. Children's earliest encounters with boundaries often arise from the various rules set by their parents. As self-awareness blossoms, they form some self-established boundaries. Hence, the task for parents is to discern these boundaries and respect children's reasonable and appropriate self-boundaries. A book we've reviewed, What You Experience, discussed that within the first 9 months from birth, our brain development is explosive. At its peak, it generates up to 20,000 brand new neurons per second. As neurons increase, they start connecting, forming networks aiding newborns in gradually understanding the surrounding world and developing self-awareness. This network, called the belief matrix, determines our lifelong self-awareness and behavioral patterns. Unfortunate experiences in an unhealthy and unloving primary family environment can transform into lifelong obsessions and behavioral patterns. Tawwab asserts that if children face abuse or neglect in their families, they might struggle to establish normal boundary senses. They might compress their self-boundaries to the lowest possible level, becoming submissive and developing a people-pleasing personality to secure care and a sense of safety, essentially becoming habituated to enduring mistreatment. Conversely, another extreme is the superhero syndrome, caused by excessively early maturity. In an absence of affectionate care, children are forced to take on numerous responsibilities, leading to a sense of obligation, self-pressure, and the belief that they have the capability and responsibility to meet everyone's needs while refusing assistance when needed. In counseling, Tawwab encountered Justin, who faced parental divorce and detachment from his father after his mother suffered from depression. Overnight, Justin matured into a responsible caretaker for his younger siblings. However, this premature maturity took a toll, revealing itself in adulthood. Justin's brothers continued to treat him as a financial resource and an emotional dumpster, while friends leaned on him for various trivialities, causing strain on his life. Despite this, Justin remained the ever-obliging, nice guy. Unfortunately, this made it difficult for him to maintain satisfying romantic relationships as potential partners often demanded much from him, leading to a swift end if their needs diminished. Tawwab diagnosed Justin's lack of proper psychological boundaries originating from emotional neglect in his upbringing. This resulted in Justin feeling guilty about any of his normal needs. The first step towards recovery is acknowledging one's emotions and realistic needs and then setting boundaries with emotional manipulators. Many seeking help often claim, "I have set my boundaries." However, Tawwab noticed that their perceived clear boundaries often remain loose. Even if others ignore or transgress them, they weakly voice protests or struggle internally while being led by others, sacrificing their own interests to meet excessive demands. Conversely, some set rigid psychological boundaries, an excessive defense mechanism. They refuse urgent and necessary requests even from close ones, never share or expose vulnerabilities or emotions. So, what defines healthy and appropriate psychological boundaries? Tawwab lists a few criteria: having clear personal values and adhering to them, having the ability to say no when necessary and accepting rejection without inner turmoil, and being able to share feelings and seek help from trustworthy individuals without reservation. Alright, up to this point, we've understood the causes of lacking boundaries, the troubles and pain it brings, and the correct standards for psychological boundaries, internally, a clear understanding of our material and emotional needs, and confident adherence to our values. Externally, being able to decisively reject unrealistic demands without psychological burden, and, among our trusted and close ones, moderately sharing emotions and seeking help openly. Now, the next crucial step is how to establish reasonable and effective boundaries. This process isn't easy. Many face significant obstacles in setting boundaries, starting with themselves and then dealing with protests and opposition from others. Tawwab explains that establishing reasonable and effective self-boundaries can be broken down into 4 steps. First, clearly inform the other party using concise and direct language to avoid missing the point. In terms of attitude and tone, neither be overly submissive nor pretend to be angry or excessively forceful. Secondly, after expressing your boundaries, if the other party presents any excessive requests, straightforwardly refuse without needing to apologize. Apologizing only reinforces their belief that their requests are reasonable and might make you feel guilty. Thirdly, dispel inner unease. Many who struggle to set boundaries are troubled by their people-pleasing personality. Their inability to refuse unreasonable requests stems from fear, regret, guilt, or embarrassment resulting from rejection. It's because they believe that setting boundaries will hurt the other person and assume the other won't accept it. Tawwab suggests using tricks to practice in such situations. For instance, mentally simulate the worst outcome calmly and objectively, envisage intense reactions from the other party and assess the actual losses if the relationship breaks. After practicing a few times, one might achieve some level of psychological desensitization. Even in the worst-case scenario, they won't panic excessively. Reminding oneself that a relationship requiring constant sacrifice of one's legitimate interests isn't a healthy relationship can be helpful. Tawwab mentioned that often we tend to frighten ourselves by envisioning catastrophic outcomes following a rift in relationships, which reality seldom matches. He cited a case in his book about Eric and his father, Paul, who had a severe drinking problem from Eric's childhood. As an adult, Eric tried persuading his father to stop drinking excessively and at least not to get aggressive after drinking. But being introverted and afraid of confrontation, Eric passively expressed his boundaries by avoiding his father's calls or complaining to his mother. However, after undergoing therapy, Eric gathered the courage to directly ask his father not to behave aggressively toward the family when drunk. Although initially confronted with harsh words from his father and feeling apprehensive afterward, Eric persevered. After several similar encounters, he noticed a reduction in his anxiety and fear, coinciding with a decrease in his father's aggressive behavior. The final step in establishing effective boundaries is resolute action. Tawwab emphasized that if others don't face the consequences after challenging your boundaries, all prior efforts are futile. He referred to a true case by American psychologist Susan Forward, a newlywed couple, Tommy and Leslie, whose marriage struggled due to Tommy's overly dependent relationship with his parents, affecting their marriage. Acting on Forward's advice, Leslie warned Tommy that unless he prioritized their family's interests and cared for her feelings, they would have to separate. Despite Tommy's excuses to evade communicating with his parents, Leslie decided to move out, finding it painful but necessary to make Tommy realize the gravity of the situation. Eventually, Tommy took the initiative to address the issue with his parents and agreed to seek marital counseling with Leslie. In a way, Leslie's seemingly intense reaction to her boundaries being crossed saved their marriage. Similarly, boundaries aren't just to limit others' infringement on our rights but also to correct our own bad habits like procrastination, overspending, and addictive behaviors. Tawwab also highlighted that consistently aligning actions with stated boundaries makes others think twice before crossing your boundaries. Alright, we've just followed Tawwab's narrative and understood the definition, origin, and cultivation of self-boundaries. Now, Tawwab moves on to specific interpersonal relationship scenarios, demonstrating how we should establish self-boundaries in 4 domains: the workplace, intimate relationships, family, and social friendships. Due to space constraints, let's focus on setting self-boundaries in interactions with family members and respecting their boundaries. Firstly, let's discuss setting boundaries with significant family members, our parents. According to Tawwab, although parents are our closest and have nurtured us, setting boundaries with parents in a manner that conforms to adult standards signifies true maturity. As mentioned earlier, issues within the family environment typically persist into adulthood. For instance, the phenomenon of "mama's boy," frequently seen on social media or in the press, represents adult sons unable to establish clear boundaries with their mothers, significantly affecting their marriages and relationships with mothers-in-law. How do we recognize when our loving parents, knowingly or unknowingly, cross our boundaries? Tawwab lists some specific criteria in his book, such as parents being overly involved in intimate details of our relationships, interfering in conflicts with others, invading our personal space without notice, expecting compliance from us and our partners, or us habitually accommodating every parental request despite causing significant inconvenience in our lives. Overall, key points in interacting with parents involve expressing love and gratitude while adhering to boundaries aligned with adult-to-adult interactions, open sharing of perspectives with mutual respect, and graciously declining conditional material support from parents. Simultaneously, requesting respect for our partners and lifestyles is important. It's also essential to avoid involving parents in conflicts with our partners and refrain from discussing intimate details of our relationships with them. Moving on to children, as parents, we must understand that setting an example of healthy self-boundaries is crucial in teaching children good habits, societal norms, and proper interpersonal relationships outside the family. Tawwab suggests that if punishment becomes the only effective method in dealing with children, or if children frequently engage in inappropriate communication, or worse, when they see their children as significant confidants and discuss too many adult topics, it's time to proactively adjust the boundaries in communication and interaction between you and your children. The primary principle in helping children set self-boundaries is acknowledging their emerging self-will even if they aren't yet adults. Parents should allow exploration and expression of their feelings, closely observe their reactions, and respond promptly, respecting their choices within the bounds of healthy growth. Tawwab illustrates this with a personal example. While taking her daughter to a parent-child gym, her daughter cried incessantly when left with a specific caregiver. Tawwab realized her daughter wasn't scared of strangers or excessively attached to herself but became unhappy when cared for by a particular caregiver. Consequently, Tawwab decided to inquire about the specific caregiver before each visit. Despite her daughter being only 4 months old, she had already formed preferences in social interactions, expressing her boundaries. This act didn't hinder the child's growth, prompting Tawwab, as a mother, to respect her daughter's choice. Furthermore, just as children's growth requires clothes and shoes that fit their size, parents should adjust the boundaries they set for their behavior as children mature. For example, discussing emotions and adult behavior should match a child's level of understanding. Some parents boast about their child's early maturity, displaying behavior or thinking similar to adults. However, Tawwab warns that while this might seem positive, it could signify children bearing pressures they shouldn't at their age, prematurely growing up and distorting their sense of self-boundaries. Alright, here's the gist of Set Boundaries, Find Peace that I've presented to you. In this book, Tawwab combines 14 years of professional psychological counseling cases and experiences to explain the importance of self-boundaries, their origins, development, and the negative impacts of lacking appropriate self-boundaries. Subsequently, Tawwab describes how to develop correct self-boundaries and maintain mental and physical well-being through a concise 4-step approach. In the book's second part, detailed descriptions are given regarding the establishment of self-boundaries in familial, romantic, friendship, and workplace relationships. Tawwab provides comprehensive boundary guidelines and specific principles for each scenario. For many, the biggest enemies to setting self-boundaries are negative psychological reactions, such as fearing the loss of friendships or feeling guilty. Additionally, if already involved in unhealthy social relationships, others might resist your boundaries to protect their dominant position through various means like ignoring, questioning, giving the silent treatment, or emotional manipulation. Tawwab briefly lists strategies to counter these resistances in the first chapter of the book. Clearly and unequivocally state rules, acknowledge receiving negative emotions, emphasize maintaining your normal rights without targeting individuals, avoid unnecessary explanations to prevent entanglements and debates, and make others bear consequences if they continue to overstep your boundaries. Tawwab concludes by boldly stating that the degree of our mental and physical health is determined by the boundaries we set. Healthy relationships, whether with family, partners, friends, or colleagues, entail mutual respect through frank and fair boundary communication. Tawwab emphasizes that when discomfort arises due to others' boundaries, the correct approach is honest communication, believing in the appropriateness of their stance, and seeking the potential for mutual improvement through open discussions. Externally, self-boundaries act as a breakwater to safeguard our personal rights and freedom, while internally serving as sensors for self-perception and delineation. This encapsulates the essence of this book. Congratulations on completing another book. Thank you for your support and attention. Please subscribe to the Tim Booker channel, like, and share this valuable knowledge with friends. Let's combine wisdom and practice to achieve financial goals and create a better future. Thank you all, goodbye.